A couple of leaders and the pledge of allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty then. We have a few additions to the agenda, but they're not very major. I would like to introduce into the agenda, introduction of our new part-time employee is item number 4. We need to add reports as item number 8. And under correspondence, we need to add the letter that we've received from Mr. Bratton and accept that into the record.
We need action on that. See the donation.
We do need to discuss. I would move to approve the agenda as amended, unless anyone has any other additions, deletions, or corrections.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. I assume there's no nays. Item number 3 is the consent agenda, which is approved the Board of Trustees minutes for December 20th. Bring into record the approved PC minutes from December 13th and approve the bills payable that were run from December 21st to January 3rd in the amount of $15,193.17.
Move to approve. Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion, any opposed? Motion passes. Next item, RJ, would you please introduce our new part-time employee?
Sure. This is Daniel Vanderhoff. He comes to us from his local boy here. Grew up here, graduated from Manitou Springs High School, and he's gonna be our part-time go-to guy.
All right, welcome, Daniel. What is your last name?
Vanderhoff.
Vanderhoff.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I think you went to school. So my kids. Oh, welcome. Thank you. The next item under new business is the town auditor proposal. Mr. Logan is here. Board, it is at your pleasure if you want to discuss this in an executive session, as matters may be subject to negotiations, or you can choose to have this in an open meeting. I'm Logan.
I prefer to hear from Mr. Logan first and
Then
then
if
make that
we,
determination.
all right, then let's proceed. Mr. Logan, if you would mind.
Well, good evening. My name's Kyle Logan. I'm the owner of Logan & Associates. I believe you all received and have read through the proposal that we put together. My firm is we're about 5.5 years old. I actually started the firm after leaving another firm that I've been with 9 years. I've been doing local government audits in the state of Colorado since 1991, and I've performed many size audits from small municipalities like yours all the way up to municipalities like the size of Colorado Springs. So I've seen a lot as far as different issues that municipalities may have. And so the other thing too is that I have a part-time, full-time person that helps me. So, you know, as far as performing your audit, we'd probably both be on site. The other thing too, the nice thing about me being just a 2-person firm is I'm here doing the audit too. And so a lot of times if issues are brought up, you know, we can resolve them during the audit instead of waiting, you know, to hear from a partner back in the main office. So that's, I think that's one valuable thing I bring. And again, I feel like I have a lot of knowledge in local government audits and local government accounting, especially in Colorado, because I've been dealing with it for many, many years. And I know, you know, there may be questions about the fees that are proposed in the audit. seems like they're, maybe a lot lower than in the prior years, from what I understand. And I feel that, it's a very reasonable fee that I'm proposing, because you have one fund. And so, you know, that's why I refer to you as one of my smaller clients, because you have one fund to audit. Yeah, okay, and so, and then as far as the proposed fee for the following years, if you notice, the fee the first year was a little higher, the fee for the following years is lower. Well, the first year is kind of the learning curve. And so I feel like it's more reasonable to give you a higher fee in the beginning to get to understand the staff I'm working with, the town, your procedures, your programs, and then after that, to me, as time goes, it should get easier to audit your town. Yeah, there may be things that come up, you know, year after year that may be unusual, but again, like I said, there's not very many things that I've not seen in my years of auditing. So the other thing too is that I encourage questions throughout the year during the you know, the length of your contract, and so it doesn't mean that I'm going to charge you that fee that I give you. That's the fee I give you. I'm not going to come back after the audit and present you with another bill saying, oh, well, it took longer. Here, you know, pay me more. No, that's the fee I agreed to. And, you know, if we would move forward, then that's what you would get. And back to encouraging questions throughout the year. You know, if issues come up, I encourage my clients to call me if they're unsure about something, because I'd rather let's talk about it then than at year end, you know, 3 or 4 months after the year end's over. So I definitely encourage that. The other thing too is that, you know, the financial statements, they are a responsibility of the town and the town's management. They're not my responsibility. You, the Board of Trustees, hire our firm, the independent auditors, to audit those numbers, audit the financial statements and the footnotes related to those financial statements, and issue an opinion. And so we can't come in and, you know, clean up the books or make adjustments. You know, it does happen that audit adjustments happen, but if we were to come in and make 20, 30 adjustments that were significant to your books, that significantly changed your numbers, then I can't be independent, okay? And so that was one of the things I outlined as far as a successful audit is the knowledge and staff of both the town employees and of me. And so, and the communication between both parties as far as, you know, if there's issues that come up during the audit. That's the other thing too. You guys hire me to do your audit. If there's an issue I come up with that I feel, you know, needs to be reported to you, I will address you before I continue on with the audit, okay? In all my years of doing audits, I haven't had to do that, but it could happen. So, you know, I just want you to know that and understand that, because a lot of times when I come in to do an audit, they say, well, the prior auditors made all these adjustments to get our books in order. Well, my professional standards don't allow me to do that, okay? And as I mentioned in the proposal, you know, not knowing when the firm selections would be, as far as doing the audit in 2 phases, you know, primarily we do it in 2 phases. One is to do it before the end of the year, to kind of come out and look at things, go through testing a lot of your procedures and your controls. And that way, if we notice something, it gives you time to fix it before the end of the year. And then we'll come out, you know, after the end of the year and audit what we refer to as the numbers, you know, the balance sheet and income statement. And so I like to kind of break it up that way because it seems to just put at ease, I think, the town staff as far as coming in all at once, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. But that's something, you know, this first year, we're already in the new year, so you know, we can talk about that if we do move forward, as far as maybe coming out for a day or two and doing some of that preliminary stuff, this first year stuff. And then, you know, near the end of 2017, a lot of times, starting about the middle of October through December, I will do a lot of preliminary work for my audits that I will be doing the following year, so. I think that's covered what I was going to talk about. Any questions, comments, concerns?
So this will be a basic financial statements audit. As I look at the different references, I see a couple different options.
Right, yeah, so in your case, yeah, what you see in the references listed there, you know, you have basic financial statements audit. That is the most common. And so, you know, in your case, one fund, the general fund. But then there's another type of audit called basic financial statements audit with a single audit. Okay, so let's say down the road, the town received a federal grant for some project. And the expenditures of that grant that were federal dollars was over $750,000. That's the threshold now. So if that happened, then you would be required to do like another type of audit. It's more of a compliance audit. So that
It's a good problem to have.
I don't think you probably have that now. And the 750,000 threshold just changed in the beginning of 2016. So again, like I say, a lot of my smaller municipal clients, I don't have any concerns that might happen. But I do include that as part of my proposal if something like that should come up. Okay. Did that answer your question?
It did, thank you.
This year in the budget for 2017, we actually created a capital improvements fund and a conservation trust fund.
Okay.
Does that, now of course that won't affect 2016.
Right.
But what does that have any bearing at all on your fee proposal for 2017?
No, it would not. Because my experience with conservation trust funds, especially with small municipalities, you don't get a lot, but you do have activity. So your transactions in that fund are going to be minimal as opposed to the general fund. You say capital projects or capital improvements?
Capital improvement, yeah.
Now,
I'm kind of using those terms interchangeably.
That's
Is that
90% RTA.
Oh, that's coming from the RTA funds. Okay. Oh, yeah, that won't be an issue either because, well, you probably saw in the proposal, I audit the RTA too. So I kind of see those transactions on both sides if I happen to have a client that participates in the RTA. So, but yeah, I've seen that, well, City of Manitou Springs does the same thing. They have a separate fund to keep track of the RTA funds. So not that you're required to, but it's just what you guys are comfortable with. Okay, because you're the ones that have the power to do that, whether you want to make a fund or not. There are certain accounting standards that we have to follow to make sure, you know, if you create a capital improvement type fund, which is a special revenue fund, in order to do that from the accounting standard standpoint, you have to have what they call a dedicated revenue source. Well, in this case, you got the RTA funds that are a dedicated revenue source, especially as long as those funds exist. Now, down the road, you know, 10, 15 years, if that goes away, then we have to, you know, look at it again. Well, does it still meet the requirements of a special revenue fund for accounting principles?
Well, the way ours is structured is that there are other projects as well, in addition to RTA projects.
Okay.
But the revenue source for all those projects is identified. And in some cases, there's a transfer from the general fund
Yeah.
to the capital
Okay.
improvement fund.
Well, that may be something we talk about, whether it's in that case, we may just may be able to treat it as a capital projects fund, which the requirements under GAAP are different. And so where, you know, capital projects funds, the difference between the two, a lot of times, capital improvements fund may exist because, say, there was a 0.25% sales tax created for that purpose, for capital improvement projects, okay? So you have this dedicated revenue source that's gonna be consistent year to year. Whereas the capital projects funds, a lot of times capital projects funds exist because there's a one-time project. A lot of times I see, you know, bonds are issued, they build a building. Well, the bonds get issued, that's the debt that gets on the books, but then you have the building, and you gotta have a fund to show the construction of that building, okay? And so a lot of times that capital projects fund can be short-lived. So, but that's something we can definitely talk about, so we don't run into an issue of, because that's one thing I look at when I'm doing my audits. If I see huge transfers from the general fund into a special revenue fund, my first question is, okay, well, why? Is this a one-time thing, or is this consistently happening? Well, if it's consistently happening, then generally accepted accounting principle says, really, it doesn't meet the definition for a special revenue fund.
Okay, yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
yeah, and it's very interesting. I did not understand the difference between the two, but also it was mainly I was concerned with, I didn't want you thinking that, you're coming in with one fund and yet
Yeah.
now we've got three.
Well, and that is, let's say you ended up adding a water and sewer fund, then we probably have to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because then you got customers, you got, it's even a different kind of accounting than your general fund, so. But yeah, with adding those two funds, I don't see an issue.
Renee, any questions?
No, I probably shouldn't talk.
Okay, you don't talk. Or do you have any further questions for Mr. Logan? I must say that you have received glowing remarks from Calhan,
Oh,
and we have relied heavily on Calhan in the recent past.
well, thank you.
Board, we do have this proposal in front of us. If you are unhappy with the numbers or think we need to negotiate, we should recess to executive session. Otherwise, we need to look at accepting this proposal.
I did have a question, not numbers related, but related to the numbers. It looked like the bid of the proposal was for 3 years with an option for 2 more. Is our acceptance of this proposal a 3-year commitment, or is it a commitment for the 2016 audit?
I'd say it's a commitment for 3 years, because that's the way it was, communicated to me. And so that's why I put in the option for doing the additional 2 years. Because if you were asking me for a single 1 year, the price is gonna be a lot higher.
So, Madam Mayor, my only concern with that is not that our intentions are mismatched, but about the appropriations clause that is typical in contracts that cross fiscal years.
Right.
So I don't know how that should be handled in this particular scenario.
I think I might be able to.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And so here's the deal, even though that's this is a proposal, that's not necessarily a contract. So I guess really, even though I said, yeah, it does bind you to 3 years, no, it doesn't, because I also, once a client accepts our firm to do their audit, I provide an engagement letter, which that's a 1-year engagement letter, okay? And so that being said, because it's a 1-year engagement letter, if you guys are unhappy with our services, you don't have to re-engage us the following year. The other thing too, we could look at, if you would feel comfortable with it, I haven't had any other municipalities ask, but I see a clause or a paragraph put in that if the town decides not to appropriate to have an audit, then you're not bound to the proposal. But again, the proposal is kind of the underlying document, but the engagement letter is your contract. And again, it's just a 1-year contract. I don't know if I'm not an attorney, so I don't know if that'll answer it. I know, I do see that, especially in Colorado, see that clause in a lot of lease documents. They put that clause in there. And so, I don't think anyone's challenged it. And we are kind of in the neighborhood of Doug Bruce, that I think it would have been challenged by now. So I don't know if that answers.
Well, if I hear that right, it's a 1-year contract with a good faith understanding of a 3-year agreement.
Yeah.
Mac?
Can I ask what the total proposal is? The total of the proposal?
Yeah. For 2016, which is will be our most recent audit, the basic financial statements would be $5,900, and a single audit, if applicable, is $2,000.
Okay. And I understood from your explanation earlier that the audit would not exceed this amount. Is that?
That's correct.
That's correct, okay.
Yeah.
And will there be some verbiage in the contract that
That's exactly-
stipulates that?
That's exactly what it says.
Oh.
It says that in the engagement letter, not to exceed. Because it's my fault if I didn't propose the right amount. That's the way I look at it. It's not your fault. Now, if something did come up and I walk in and say, oh, by the way, Kyle, we have these 5 other funds. Then, that's because that we'd have to talk about, but no, it's a not to exceed fee. That's everything. That's, yep.
Board, I say I like very much that there's a compliance portion and a numbers portion. I think we have been needing that, and I think that's a good and reliable thing to do. And I would like to move that we accept this proposal.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Welcome.
Well, thank you.
Thank
For
you.
the opportunity.
What do you see as the next steps?
Okay, so the next step is, I will put together an engagement letter in the next couple weeks. And shall I send it to John or Renee? I can send it as an electronic copy, fine.
That's fine.
So I'll email it to you guys. And then I will look at my calendar and contact you guys and talk about some dates. Because the deadline to the state auditor is July 31st. Okay. But, and so this kind of late notice, I have a lot of my March and April filled up. But, so we may be looking at May. But again, I need to look at my calendar again. And so I'll come back with some proposed dates.
In between now and then is the engagement letter.
Yeah, so I'll send the engagement letter. And then what I will also do is, that I send to all my clients, is I send a list. It's kind of like what I talked about in the proposal, but I'll send a list of things that we will like to have when we start the audit. The first year, the list is gonna look kind of overwhelming because we got a lot of the first year stuff, gathering documents, gathering ordinances, and things that has been passed as far as directing, certain town fees, town operations. And again, a lot of, I call it permanent file information. And then, and so, if we can find time for me to come out for a day or two, that would be great, because then we can take care of all that. And also, I can, the other thing is sitting down with Renee and John saying, okay, how do things work here? From the time something's purchased to the time it's paid for. Okay, and so I'll, do a lot of that documentation, as we call it documentation of internal controls. And then we'll pick some samples of checks written, samples of payroll, and certain things, and test those to what, the procedures were that were told to us. Okay, is that what's actually happening? So that's kind of the preliminary phase. And then again, the secondary phase, that'll be auditing the numbers, in the general fund, primarily concentrating on the balance sheet. We send confirmations out to third parties, like to the banks, to verify that. If there's any significant, I can't remember if there's any significant leases or anything that the town has, we may confirm things like that. But I'd say the final audit probably take this first year 3 to 4 days. Years after that, maybe 3. So.
Board, I think we should move to authorize John as being able to sign the engagement letter in case it doesn't fall well within a board meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So he will be signing that letter
Okay.
and we'll be good to go.
Very good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you
Very
very
much.
much.
Thank you.
Look forward to working with all of you. Okay.
The next item on our agenda is a discussion regarding the empowerment of the planning commission. It's section 2222B of the municipal code. I had asked Mr. Alexander to write a note about this, and he did, and it is included here. And I will summarize that. Section 2222B states, in addition, the planning commission shall recommend to the board of trustees approval of the issuance of building permits which have been properly applied for and are in accordance with the rules and regulations of the town. The board of trustees may empower the planning commission to grant final approval of building permits under such conditions that it deems to be in the best interest of the town. The planning commission shall have authority to advise the board of trustees with regard to determining requirements for the following: public and private parking areas, exterior signs and advertising devices, external architectural character of all structures, dimensional criteria for the location and size of structures in relation to property lines and minimum lot areas, subdivisions, street development, water and waste systems. Willie goes on to say that the board has never formally empowered the planning commission to grant final approval, but he feels that perhaps the board ought to, so that the same confidence may or may not exist. Ought we do this? He also said, with the town manager, the board may now want to assume the responsibility for granting final approval. He's brought it up a couple of times, and although it has been pretty much standard operating procedure in the past, I think he does have a good point that we should probably formally do this with, maybe on an annual basis, so that the planning commission knows.
Planning commission has not seen Willie's notes and hasn't been able to give you a recommendation on this.
It's been the same thing that's gone on for every
No.
year, and
The letter to you from Mr. Alexander was never given to the planning commission for review, so that we could give you options, pros and cons, of whether you should accept his idea. I would suggest that you refer this back to the planning commission for a recommendation.
I'd be happy to do that, Dick. I was just saying that the majority of what's in here is simply what is section 2222B.
I understand, he quoted the code, but I would like to point out that the code is outdated. This code was written when the town board did approve every building permit. Subsequently, we've had a regional building department formed, and we've signed on as a participating government for them to approve building permits, not the town. Planning Commission does not presently approve any building permits. What we do is review the construction drawings of the project to make sure it complies with the Green Mountain Falls Land Use Code. And we do a diligent job of that. That's what's after the last sentence here, the things you listed here. We do that. And then the procedure is to stamp the site plan or the drawings, and the chairman of the planning commission signs it before it goes down to regional building. The regional building knows that we've completed our review for compliance with the land use code. We do not review for compliance with the International Building Code. We are not technically qualified, and we've agreed to let the regional building do that for us. So what you just read, the first paragraph, all the way down to the last sentence, should be deleted from our town ordinances because it no longer applies. So for Willie to say, well, we think you ought to let us have the authority to approve building permits, not necessary. We already have the regional building department doing that service for us.
All right, board, I would move that this returns to the planning commission for their discussion.
Good, thank you.
Additionally, I'd probably encourage review by Regional Building Council, because it's a service available to us, and make sure that we have their input on there and see if there are some exceptions or some other things that there might be an intermediary. There might be some cases where we do want to do that.
All right, John?
Those cases.
Just out of curiosity, how was it done before, I'm sorry, the board of trustees had done?
Before there was a regional building department, the board of trustees approved all building permits in the town. Apparently, we issued our own building permits, the town did. Well, that's all gone,
Okay.
long ago. So it's another case of the ordinance has never been changed to reflect current procedures.
Okay, before we go further down this rabbit hole, thank you. And the motion on the table is to refer this back to planning commission and further have this reviewed by regional building. Is there, any further discussion?
Just a question about that. What I think we would want to ask them, or that we would ask them to review and advise on this language, is that?
Exactly.
Okay, yeah.
Right, you would so do that?
Yeah.
Is there further?
What I'm hearing is that there's activities that are performed in town that require permits. And some of those permits, PPR rise to a certain level that PPRBD issues, or some of those activities rise to a level that PPRBD issues a permit for them. There's another body, it sounds like there's another body of activity that our code requires townspeople to obtain a permit for that is not within PPRBD's purview, and that those might be the such conditions that are under debate here, but I don't know what those are.
And additionally,
I don't know of
take
any
the
such.
opportunity to open this door and say, RBD, can you please advise us on updating our code so it more better reflects the reality of where we are today with our IGA?
So I would think that we need to do that, and then we will have planning review.
And once we get a
After.
response back from them.
So
You wouldn't use a engineering of the septic system to go through regional, to go through the health department.
Yeah, that's a help.
It had nothing to do with the planning commission or the board for that matter, right?
Well, it actually would though. We have to make sure it's within lot lines.
Really? Okay.
Dimensional criteria for condition.
Supposed to.
The system we've got in place is working just fine. The ordinance is outdated.
All right, we have a motion and a second. There is no further discussion. All those in favor, vote saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, board.
Item C is the purchasing card policy. I sent you last Thursday a pretty lengthy policies and procedures manual. I don't know that you had time to read it. I will preface this by saying there are many things repeated in this, and they are repeated on purpose. Mostly to emphasize responsibility and reconciling of expenses. Reconciling expenses has to include what department and what line item. And no matter what we call that, if we call it account or line item, whoever has made a purchase and has the receipt has to write down where that gets reconciled, so then the admin, whoever is going to be designated to do that, can check to make sure it is reflected in the right budget and can perform monthly spot audits. They wouldn't be auditing every transaction, but they would be auditing to be sure that records are being kept and kept correctly. I don't know how you feel about discussing this yet because it is quite lengthy. Have any questions? In some cases, depending on what bank or banking facility issues a card, we can have online reconciliation and auditing. But in this case, we are such a small outfit with a limited number of cards, it would probably be paper, at least for now. But you see in the back, there are ways to keep track of those expenditures, and I would expect that whoever is making a credit card charge or a P-card charge would write it on the form, would have the bank statement with it and the receipts with it, and you keep the files monthly in that order. And yes, it's a big pain, and yes, it really keeps things straight.
Thank you for this work. It's great, it's comprehensive, and I think it flows well with updated procurement policies. And while I'd like to see it about a page long, I'm not sure that it's worth the endeavor to figure it out, and the heartache alone to learn it and comply with it, maybe will present other opportunities for purchasing.
Once the system is in place, it's not terrible. Part of the reason to have a stringent purchasing card policy is not for our current staff, but it's for the future staff, so that they realize it is a very serious
We're not gonna hire bad staff.
effort.
Right, so it's for no staff.
It's for no one. Except
They're talking about you.
I know.
super paranoid that everything goes right.
I had a couple, I did read through it, I had a couple of questions based on my experience as an employee under similar policies elsewhere. So start with the limits on the application. Are those deliberately set for
Those-
GMF, or were those?
I set those on an arbitrary level, and we need to review those and make sure they are with our procurement policy.
I don't know that the procurement policy, the limits are more procedures that must be done prior to procurement, not necessarily formal payment. So I don't know that they're incompatible. I think they're fine. I just wanted to know what the key was there. At other places I've been, personal expenses, instead of having administrative staff at the employer chase down accidental personal charges, the employees have been, in my experience, have been responsible simply to remit payment directly to the bank for those. And the way they handle that is that they also make the employee responsible for all late charges. So if you don't do it, it's on you further for the late fees. I didn't see mention of late fees in here. Related to that comment is around the month-end review. I might suggest instead of a calendar month that the treasurer set the cadence according to the payment due dates for the bank. Could be monthly, but not necessarily calendar months, if that makes sense. That was it.
And I think that's easy enough to do. The only concern I would have with personal charges is then someone's still responsible on the other end besides the reconciliation, but the approval and audit and to make sure that that's happening. So it's going to be the same situation. Someone's always going to be chasing down if it was an accidental charge or a personal charge.
I compliment you on all the work you put into it also, because it does mirror when I was working in a government situation, how we had to do this. And the personal ones were not taken care of directly, they had to go through because of the audit system, they had to go through the office of the building to take care of those. And again, frowned upon quite heavily, so we certainly don't want to see, we ought to have, something about every time that happened before, there's a suspension part too, because it should not ever happen.
It does.
Right. But it certainly shouldn't, so there ought to be maybe some grace in there for, considered, but then, a suspension of the card if it's abused.
Okay.
But other than that, it certainly, modeled what I was under too, so I find this to be very good.
And to that end, I would substitute the word occasional to rare. Is that,
For which page it is, so I
this
can
is
go in.
card holder beware reimbursement of personal expenses. while the commercial purchase is not permitted, we recognize that a rare incident may
Okay.
occur. Occasionally seems permissive.
We are not permissive. All right, so to that end, I would change that. I would add in, let's see,
The monthly,
Ken, your cardholder agreement addresses that. If there's any charges or fees imposed by the bank for failure to pay within 30 days. About half of it. That's what the.
failure, reimbursement to the town via payroll deduction for personal purchases.
that can happen.
If a failure, plus any administrative fees, those would be the late fees. Thank you. Yeah. Missed that.
And I don't know about the legality of it, but as a business owner, I would say plus 18% APR on it. I'm serious, that you discourage it so that there's an encouragement to pay that back. And that the town then collects that in the percentage rate on that, both on that employee, because I'm less confident that we could go through payroll to dock that person's pay for that purchase. And so you could have a purchase that's outstanding, essentially it's a loan that we've provided for that employee that might have used on a rare accidental occasion. And we would not want that hanging out there very long without
Okay,
some sort of
well,
discouraging.
I'll add those, I'll add some sort of verbiage about if this happens more than 3 times in a 3-month period, suspended use. What's that, 3 times in 3 months?
That's pretty liberal, that's good.
It's pretty liberal.
That's pretty liberal.
And I will change the wording for the,
And to that end, I would probably, not make that an automatic resolution. Needs brought before the board for decision.
Okay.
Automatic board review of continued use of cars.
Okay.
Because I can see some extenuating circumstances.
things happen.
Yeah.
I know that the one we ran into probably the most is when Amazon would just automatically take the card, the wrong card. Okay, and change the bank.
You use it 6 times before you realize you used the wrong ones.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so, and I will
can
change the,
relate to that.
all right, so I will,
Going back to the spending limits, what do you get the card, what would you like to see these spending limits be at?
But
RJ,
these
you're
are
probably
high
gonna-
limits.
Yeah,
I
And I
certainly
think
think
these
those
are
are
fairly
low.
high. The only thing that I can see is if RJ has something in public works that can go.
yeah, he was actually the one I was asking. I figured yours were lower, yours.
It's all you get.
I wanted over my maximum, I would say. I mean, I have to go before the board, or my liaison, which is John now, for anything 1,000 or more, so why would we have it more?
But if he
But if
approves
he
it,
approves it,
do
yeah.
you wanna be able to use the card to make a
Well,
purchase or
I
not
mean-
use the card?
In my opinion, the card will only be used if we don't have time to do a purchase order, and if we have to get it approved anyway, we might as well get a purchase order and go through the regular channels.
Yeah, I'm thinking that in a budget of our size, these limits are really high. And that maybe, I don't know what exactly to suggest, but maybe like $1,000 limit, is gonna be, still will make a little bit liberal for a budget of our size. All of a sudden, you can find yourself with, kind of a pretty good hole.
Yeah, I don't mind it, we can do $1,000 single and monthly limit, and that's fine. And the nice thing with working with most banks, if there's an issue, you can call them and adjust that if there's something necessary. The only thing I would ever see is becoming necessary, most items that are above 1,000, we're gonna issue a purchase order or a check for it. That's just how we operate. The only time I would see that changing is if for some reason we had a travel training issue perhaps with the new marshal. And even then, I would wanna know why it was that high. But,
Well, Are we gonna have, are they gonna be individual cards per person? I mean, so
They
they would
are.
have individual limits, because that's where I ran into trouble before, is sharing a card on those, and then,
And we don't want people to share a card because we want everyone to be very responsible for their card and their receipts and their budget.
Okay.
Because it's too sticky when it's, oh, you can use it and you can use it, not this receipt.
right, plus if they take and use their accidental personal on the cards that I'm on, I'm not gonna be happy if I have to pay him 18%.
Good.
Seems okay, but I think you'll be surprised that the more you start to use it, you'll find the fluidity of it trumps the procurement purchase or, card, the purchase order system.
Right,
And so I think we will be going back and adapting the procurement policy to match what we do with the fee card.
right.
Plus, have any of the places that are considered getting cards from, have they offered like a percent back for the usage of it?
And I haven't even pursued that part
Because
yet,
like
because
the
it is
ones,
nice to get that.
the ones I had gave a 1% back.
Right, and
So-
I know JP Morgan does, I think UMB does too.
Okay, so.
And that 1% is,
That can add up to a lot in a hurry.
Yeah.
When you're using it, so I think you'll be surprised, so you may want to look at something in between as far as a monthly, a cap on the individual, because RJ lives too close to Cripple Creek, for them.
it says no casinos.
But you may wanna look at a monthly one that allows for, some flexibility.
Well, and I think that's gonna be our futures, we're gonna step into this and then see where we need to be flexible.
And maybe even possibly like having one central one for online purchases and stuff like that. I mean, that's where I'm envisioning being able to use that. Right now, everything we have has to go brick and mortar, so if we have an avenue to be able to use online purchases and save some money, but I don't wanna have everybody's card out there. I mean, I'm a little leery about that, so maybe we could have
Well,
one
and
central for that.
That's kind of the beauty of people having their individual cards is you'll notice right away, especially if we have a system where we can see it online, if it doesn't make sense, if there's a charge out there that isn't yours. If you have your own card, you know where you've been online. So we have some changes to make, but here's the start.
Very good, thank you.
All right, I will bring that back to the next meeting.
One page version.
No, that's your problem.
Reduce.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Bring your glasses. Yeah, basically, you can sum it up by be responsible, keep your receipts
That could fit on one page.
on a business card.
That's right.
There is no old business. So item 6 is public input for items not listed on the agenda. Please state your name and your address for the record, please.
Mike Logan, 8174 Peter Park Road, Cascade, Colorado. I will also represent the chamber. I want to thank the board for allowing us to have the Christmas tree lit for the days that we did. We've removed all the wiring, and the bulbs will come off the tree on the 7th, I believe it's 10th. That's only because of the availability of the trimming equipment. But once again, thank you for allowing us to do this. We've gotten lots and lots of good response. And, it seems like as you came up the path after Green Mountain Falls lit up, Cascade started lighting up, Via Park started lighting up. So I think we had an influence.
All right, very good. Thank you. Is there anything further? Seeing none, we'll move to item 7, which is correspondence. The first item is the PC draft minutes for December 27th. As a reminder, there is an opening on Planning Commission. And the next item is the letter that you have received tonight from Mr. Bratton. And for the record, this says, Enclosed is my check in the amount of $13,000 as a donation to help the town to help pay for specific capital improvement projects as follows. The first item is listed in Gmf Capital Improvement Fund Program Summary of the 2017 budget as Project Priority 4 at an estimated cost of $20,000 with possible funding sources of private donations and the Historic Green Mountain Falls Fund. Mr. Bratton proposes donating $10,000 to work on replacing the dead grass and the mud where the sod used to be, including the sprinkler system. Item 2 is on the capital improvement list. The needed repairs for the altitude peak sign. The vertical posts were rotten at the base, it was feared the sign might fall over. So DPW obtains new posts and planned to repair the sign in-house. Mr. Olds, who is on the Parks Committee, has volunteered to repaint the sign. And Mr. Bratton has agreed to help by paying for the materials, and he's donating $3,000 with the enclosed check. I very much appreciate their donation, but I must say that there is a group that is planning to move forward with Fishing as Fun grant and would present that in February. I don't know that we can accept repair to the sprinkler system if we may be looking in 2018 to be moving heavy equipment through there to take care of the lake. I would hate to see all this money and hard work basically get torn up again.
I can't envision much heavy equipment going on the area we're gonna sod. The fact is, you don't have any 2018 projects funded yet. Maybe 2019, 2020. In the meantime, we have a horrible looking lake. The park is despicable. It's been now 4 years since that grass died. We've had no water, no grass in the park at all. And it's time for us to move out and say, yeah, heavy equipment may come later. We don't know when, but let's get real and get the grass back in for this summer.
Well, Board, if I am moving ahead of my presentation a little bit, I will be proposing the first week in February a Fishing as Fun grant, whose money we would be receiving at the end of 2017 for improvements in 2018. If all goes as well and all the money comes through. Historic Green Mountain Falls Fund is aware of that as well. And I appreciate your donation so much, but RJ and I have also talked about, what if for this year we're just overseeding and watering without the sprinkler system, because I don't want to see it get torn up and see the town basically throwing away their efforts, because I don't know what's gonna go through there.
You can't overseed and water with standpipes. That just won't result in a grass for you. You really, only one way to attack it, like we did the last time. Put in sod, put in a sprinkler system that works, that gives you full coverage, and saves water. And sprinkler systems can take quite a lot of weight. I don't know what heavy equipment you're talking about driving over the side. That mystifies me.
Well, we saw what kind of equipment the last time we just had the lake dredged. It was that size equipment.
Yeah,
We
we're not,
didn't have anything in the contract that would compel them to repair it. I think that could be handled through.
What area are you talking about? What is that? by the
from the
school?
land office building down to the playground and the gazebo island. Same way we did with the GoCo grant. Jane, I can't see us going through another summer with
I
that.
understand that, Dick, and you know,
Now, if your grant comes through in time,
it won't come through in time for this summer, it won't.
well, okay, we're arguing about when it's gonna get done.
Well, but
I'm
that,
giving you a way to get it done this summer. You're saying, let's wait till next summer and hope we get a grant. I'm saying, I don't like to do hoping, because if you don't get the grant, then we're right back where we started from.
if we don't get the grant, we're no worse off than we are. I mean, we have this money sitting here, but do we take away the HGMFF funds that they're tossing back and forth of helping us with the grant to do this. I don't know, I don't think we have all the players together yet, Matt?
When does the grant go in, and when is the grant granted?
It's a long process. The grant is due at the end of February. Then there's an oral presentation that I'd go to Denver and do at the end of May. We would find out probably August, if we're lucky,
That would be really lucky.
but probably in the
Probably
next
will not find
cycle.
out until 2018 winter timeframe.
Because the
And
work would be
money
done.
could start flowing by April 2018, which then we have our own scheduling concerns around. the lake.
We've had some, in the not too distant past, we've had some real good luck with getting grants. And on the strength of that, it's not outside the realm of possibility that we will get the grant because of the history. And so, I think every time that we apply for a grant, we have a better chance of getting that grant. And I kind of support the idea of not spending money now that has the possibility of getting wasted.
The other factor to consider is a lot of these grants require matching funds. The more money we spend on park improvements ahead of grants, the less multiplier we have available to us on those dollars that we spend too early, if you will.
You also reduce the size of the grant, increase your chances of getting funded.
That's true too.
I'm not sure fishing is fun, grants. Many of them go to resodding a park.
That portion won't, but and they've already said it won't, but GoCo's willing to get in there and help us out.
Well, that's another source I hadn't heard before.
But
What's the status of that grant request?
We have a presentation on February 7th
Okay.
to present all this information.
to present all this together,
I think it'd be nice if you guys would communicate with the planning commission. They're supposed to serve you and advise you. You're doing all these things without telling us. Come on, communicate with us. Let us work as a team, not individually.
and here we are, and I'm telling you, we're gonna be presenting this in the first week in
Yeah.
February.
Thank you.
This isn't a surprise. This is just work that's been being worked on.
No, it is a surprise. Nobody in the planning commission knows that you're writing a grant.
Haven't written one yet. We're just trying to get everything together.
Okay. And why don't you invite the planning commission to work with you on this grant writing? We have skills down there that can help you.
And I appreciate that, but I must admit, in my history, no one from planning commission has ever offered to help me with that. But that's neither here nor there. Right now, what we're discussing is what we should be doing with your generous offer. And it is generous, and I do appreciate it. But we need to consider, do we go ahead and do this, knowing that we would be taking $10,000 away from money that they have talked about helping with this other grant?
How solid is the $20,000
I don't-
estimate?
Gene, I don't follow that.
Dick, you're putting forth $10,000.
Yes,
And I've been talking to HGMFF,
yes.
and they've talked about using their funding
Yes,
to help with what we've been talking about on the other side of the grant. I don't want to jeopardize any money that they're talking about putting towards a grant to do this.
Are these not independent things, or are they tied together?
Monday morning.
They're related.
Monday morning, I had breakfast with Jesse's troop. He confirmed that they will come in and help us do this sprinkler inside. That's high on their list too. It's just an eyesore. It just doesn't speak well to our town to have people visit and see that park the way it is.
That was something that Jesse promised 2 years ago when those swings were in there.
Yes.
And he told me not too long ago that money had been on the table and been on the table, and they eventually took it back because the town didn't do anything.
No,
Understand it, but
Monday morning, he says the money is there.
I'm just saying, what he told me, we need to make sure that all the players are on the same page with this. I don't want to jeopardize this project, I don't want to jeopardize the future project. Because while I totally believe he said what you said he did, he told me something different. So we just need to make sure we're all on the same page with this.
And to that end, I might suggest
Perhaps we
that
can have them
we could
address
have
this in
a
writing.
subcommittee get together, get all the parties together, get a plan for the park. It's clear the plan, the park needs attention, both big picture and short term, and figure out the best way to affect it. And we have, some things are triggering some decisions right now, but if we hold on that, make some decisions, make a plan for how we pull all these elements together, I think we can be successful. I think a few people need to get together and submit something to the board as a plan for how we improve the park in the near term and long term.
All right? I think we need to do that.
Mr. Bratton, would your offer be willing to hold until everybody just, we get a solid understanding of what that process would look like?
The reason I wrote you the check is to get something done. Get the sod in the spring, so we have a beautiful park this summer.
Obviously,
I
it's not
didn't
gonna
wanna
happen.
wait until 2018.
Well,
I didn't
obviously
wanna
it's
wait
not
till
gonna-
2018.
we're talking about that.
Okay, Mr. Bratton, obviously it's not gonna happen in January, so we've got a few months before spring
Yes.
shows up.
You
Is
can
your money
hold the
still-
check for a few more months.
Thank you,
All right, thank you.
appreciate it.
I would like that because I want to get off the assumptions about how much damage would be done in the long run too. We're making assumptions about what heavy equipment would be there and everything else, and the ability to write in, like Chris said, be able to, have it written into any contracts of work done on the lake, that repair would be done to anything that was damaged. And I agree too that sprinkler systems can hold up to a lot. Maybe the replacement of a few heads and stuff, but the underground structure is usually pretty solid. So it may be something we can move forward, but if you and Jesse and Dick can sit down and work out an idea on how much that they're willing to commit to over both, both situations.
Right.
I watched them doing the dredging last year. I didn't see those heavy equipment anywhere near the area that he's talking about. They're on the dirt, on that gravel road and over. I didn't see anybody who was traveling over that solid area. Talking about
And I'd just note that as hard as it is to have these conversations, I think it highlights the importance of bringing it before the board for a comprehensive thought on issues like donations and where that's going and what that might affect and how that will impact future plans and where we go and how we best move the whole town together. Because there's clearly a need and there's clearly a great benefactors provided some impetus, and we just need to figure out how to best leverage that into the best for the community.
All right,
Thank you for the
Thank you.
next item on our agenda is reports. Mr. Corley,
Nothing important.
Tyler?
Just quickly, the executive director, transportation director, and finance director for the RTA have been placed on administrative leave from PPACG.
I saw that. So are you running to be one of those?
I am working through the process as the executive committee.
Oh, I have no report. Cameron, Michael, David, Chris, John.
Yes, this is our time to give you our monthly reports, so be prepared. I'm the only one that really wants to come out and make a report.
That's right, it's on here.
Give a report. But first of all, the town marshal process, I think in the last couple of months, we've made some really good progress. The town marshal selection committee interviewed a candidate a couple weeks ago. We have another interview scheduled tomorrow. And there are several other candidates that we have been given to the committee to review. So I'm going to be looking for a decision, once we have the interview tomorrow, a decision from the board on whether they want to interview these other candidates. But I'm really, and I think we're in a good position that we should be able soon to give the board one or more candidates. I'm not sure what the decision's going to be, but one or more candidates for you to consider. So I think we are making some really good progress, and hopefully we can get to the point where we've got that position filled. As far as the town manager clerk is concerned, pursuant to the board's decision to proceed with recruitment, and I've notified the board of this, that we've placed advertisements at the CML website, the International City Management Association, and also the Colorado City and County Managers Association websites. I mean, it really surprised me that we've already received several expressions of interest in actually 2 applicants. So the closing date is January 31st, and I recommend that we let the process go to the end of January, and then in the meantime, I'll be working with Clay Brown on identifying some city and town managers that we can have on a review panel and an interview panel to look at the applications, to do some interviews, and then give some recommendations to the board. And if you have if you know of any people, city or town managers that you'd like to suggest, please let me know.
On that note, before I forget, I have 2 names for you to consider. David Buttery in Woodland Park,
Okay,
and then Cindy.
okay,
Jason from Manitou has already said he would be interested.
okay, good, yeah, great, thank you, thank you. As far as the excess military equipment, I've reported it several times in my management report to the board, but we were able to comply, thank goodness, with all the requirements of the excess military equipment program, which is also known as the 1033 program. There's an annual audit requirement. Because of the fact that we don't have a staffed marshal's department at this time, all of that equipment has been transferred over to the sheriff's department for their custody until we can have a marshal on board and get the equipment back. But the requirement was that we had to do a physical inventory of each piece of equipment. The mayor and I went down to the sheriff's department. We did that, and so now we're in compliance, and everything's. It's kind of unusual too that they've given equipment to a number of different municipalities and counties throughout the state, but the requirement is that every single participating jurisdiction has to go through that compliance, that inventory process and get certification. And if not, then that means that nobody else is going to, until that's done, nobody else is going to be able to get any additional equipment. So I'm glad we're not in the position of blocking that anyway. The budget, as you know, of course, the budget was approved by you on December 6th. So we now have an adopted budget. And the good news is also that we made all the deadlines, and the budget was turned over to the Department of Local Affairs this year, and so we're in good standing with them. Tonight you interviewed the firm that responded to our request for proposals for auditing services, and at the next meeting you'll be interviewing the 3 firms that responded to our request for proposals for legal services. And I would ask that the board go ahead and hold those interviews in executive session, because you'll have 3 competing firms. I don't think it would be fair for the 2 firms to sit there and listen to the presentation by the other firm. The other, and also one of the firms, I don't remember which one it was, asked if those interviews were going to be held in executive session, and I told them they would be. The zoning code, as you discussed at your last meeting, and as the planning commission has discussed, the zoning code has only been available to the public by acquisition. And we looked into that at the request of the planning commission, at the request of the board, determined that when it was adopted in 1997, there was a provision in the ordinance adopting the code that it would be available for acquisition in the office of the town clerk. I discussed that matter with Matt Kropp today, and he believes that the ordinance may have been misunderstood. And so what I asked him to do was to send me something in writing, an email or whatever, saying that, and saying that in his opinion, it would not be necessary for us to go back and amend the ordinance that adopted the zoning code and that had that language in it. And so therefore, if I get that from him, then we can go back to muni code and we can say, look, we want this put on the, on our, not only put in our book, but also on the website in a searchable form. And by the way, Trustee Thorne, several months ago, actually, I guess, came in and we went ahead and put the muni code searchable form of code on our website. And when I was looking at it today, I noticed that that has been removed and we're back to just the regular form. Now, Derek, with the county, who helps us with the website, had made some changes. And I'm thinking that somehow or another something got dropped. So I'm gonna be back in touch with him to see if we can get that back on, because that's a whole lot better to use than the old, standard look at it and form that you can't do anything with. And then one of the requirements, well, the last item I'm going to mention is that one of the requirements of the grant that funds the contract under which I'm working is a requirement that I produce a transition plan document. The purpose of this is to provide a time schedule, basically, in the steps that we need to go through to transition from the former structure to a town manager structure. And I've put that together in draft form anyway, and I gave it to you in my management report. So if you've got any comments, suggestions, things that need to be added or changed, more than happy to do that, because I know it's in draft form. And I'm really confident that as we go forward, we'll be adding things to it. So it'll be an active document. But in any event, that's that. That's what I got that. Any questions?
Strategic planning session, is that coming?
21st, January 21st, yeah. And thank you, and I'll be reminding you also that it'll be at the fire station, and it'll be from 8 to 12.
In regards to the 1033 equipment.
Yeah.
Are we compelled to keep it, once we've acquired it, are we compelled to keep it? Or can we give any or all of it back?
I believe, without knowing fully, but I believe that we can give those items back. I don't think we can't sell them as far as I
understand.
But if the town didn't want one of those items for more, I think that we can turn them back to the government, but I've not looked at that specifically.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Renee?
All the business licenses were emailed out. 8 came back, so we sent hard copies out to them. We've received 66 back so far.
66 out of,
About 240, 250. And the Black Hills Energy Ordinance and the Loitering Ordinance were sent for publication. So I haven't received notification back from the Gazette. I have a person to the Courier. And then they're working with the Gazette now that they've been bought out. So
Okay.
I'm just waiting for notifications to come back.
Yeah.
Fourth,
keep us apprised of the costs on those.
yeah, I'm
since
gonna be
it's,
surprised at them too.
Yeah.
Fourth quarter lodging tax forms and business licenses went out before Christmas. They're due back by January 20th. John Dooley, his RTA appointment ended December 31st, so he'll need to be reappointed CAC. We were gonna do that at the January 17th Board of Trustees meeting. I'm working on the year-end expenses and revenues, what gets posted to each side. And watching what comes in and what's going out and noting that. And then, getting ready to file the documentation for the highway users tax fund, so that the town continues to receive the money.
All right, thank you. RJ?
My maintenance report. December bank began with decorating the town hall with Christmas lights, and I've heard several nice comments in regards to that. Trying to keep up with the chamber, I'm not, not quite there yet. Most of the month has been working around snows and ice, just consists mostly of sanding slick areas, but we have at least 2 14-hour days, and that was just because of the nature of the storms coming in the middle of the day. After several calls and much sanding, CSP was finally got the leak on Howard fixed. So we got rid of that ice dam over there. I spent time on equipment repair and upkeep of snow plows. We've had meetings in regards to BPRTA and the lake project, and excited to get those projects off the ground. In addition to other daily, weekly chores, I've interviewed and hired 1 part-time person and 1 on-call person. We're just waiting for their background check to come through.
All right. Board, if there is nothing further, oh, Matt?
Has anybody brought up the idea of a light at the bottom of the driveway? There's a telephone pole there that would, and I think that having a light at the end of the driveway would make accessibility and identifiability considerably better.
I wonder if that's a question for utilities, if they can put a light there since we have a pole there.
What they can do,
You love the lights.
I would toss it into the discussion of the town hall additional work that needs to be done, whether we want to tie that in with the discussion of the monument sign and or the entrance and or paving or any other improvements there. Go down that road until we make that decision about what we want it to look like.
And that work should also, we should probably also bring the fire department into it since that's also gonna be their entrance.
Right.
As well.
Right.
But I think eventually I would like the idea of having some sort of light.
Right, right. And I think, I would
Motion
imagine.
sensor.
For the boxes. I would imagine the testers would like to have a light there too.
I still have that picture on my phone.
So we'll ask utilities to see, and if utilities would just do it because they have a post, free is for me. All right, if there's nothing further, this meeting is adjourned at 8:18.
Yeah.
I could go with.
I don't think